Thousands of schools in England to be hit by more teacher strikes. The teaching union says 98% of its members rejected what leaders call an insulting pay offer from the government.
For the amount of work they do, they need to be paid more.
I understand about teachers needing to strike to increase their pay, but it just causes some inconvenience for parents.
Also this lunchtime, the family of Olivia Corbell in court witnessed the sentencing of the man who murdered her. Plus...
Afternoon, lads. So obviously I've got the body camera on today.
Will body cams for football referees discourage bad behaviour on the pitch? And...
Dame Arlene
a lifetime of achievement. Dame Arlene Phillips is honoured at the Olivier Awards.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good afternoon. Parents can expect more school disruption in the coming weeks after teachers voted overwhelmingly in favour of renewed strikes. The National Education Union says 98% of its members agreed to further industrial action after rejecting what leaders called an insulting pay offer. Well, thousands of schools across England are expected to be affected by two new walkouts planned for April the 27th and May the 2nd, in a move described by the government as extremely disappointing. Amy Lewis reports.
Teachers haven't just been marking their homework, but also their ballot papers.
Today, we are putting Gillian Keegan, Secretary of State for Education, on notice.
Ministers have been told to go back to the drawing board and return with a better pay offer.
Teachers have voted in the right way because the offer was insulting.
Teachers are fed up. They are absolutely tired of doing more for less.
For me personally, I've been striking because I believe that schools need more funding. It's as simple as that.
The pay offer included a one-off £1,000 payment on top of this year's pay increase and a 4.5% pay rise for next year. 98% of members of the National Education Union rejected the deal, meaning some teachers in England will strike on April the 27th and May 2nd. Last month, strikes were called off in Scotland and Wales after teachers accepted a 7 and 8% pay increase for the current year. Rishi Sunak insists his government's offer is a good deal for teachers in England.
A very reasonable offer on pay. The NEU union has rejected that, announced new strike dates, which will be enormously damaging to our children who have already suffered. Their education has already suffered as a result of COVID, and the run-up to exams, to hear about new strike dates in the face of what is a very reasonable pay offer, I think is extremely disappointing news.
On strike days, parents need to find alternative childcare or even take time off work.
Well, I'm not happy about keep missing school, and they fine parents for taking children out of school for leave of absence, but it's okay for teachers to shut the school and then we've got to look after our children for the days.
Obviously I understand that the governments have got constraints, but for the amount of work they do, they need to be paid more.
Lapstone, pay the bills!
It's not just teachers, but also junior doctors who are yet to resolve their dispute with the government. Ministers have until today to make an improved pay offer, or they will walk out as planned 4 days in a row next week.
What do we want?
The winter may have passed, but the discontent is far from over. Amy Lewis, ITV News.
Well, the industrial disputes don't stop there. Over 1,000 passport office workers have walked out for 5 weeks in a row over their pay and conditions. The strike increases the risk of delays for those hoping to receive new passports in time for the summer holidays. Our consumer editor, Chris Choi, has been following this. This could have a pretty significant impact, couldn't it, on people?
You could hardly pick a worse time, could you, for problems, potential problems, at least at the passport office. Let me show you some pictures that have come in from the Peterborough Passport Office. You can see there are picket lines there. You might see on the placards looking for a 10% pay rise, part of a much wider range of civil service strikes. Let me show you now the details of what's going on. First, look at these dates. 5 weeks of strikes starting today, going through not only Easter, but also the start of May and that early May bank holiday. The union today warning of potential severe impact. Meanwhile, though, the Passport Office themselves are saying there's no change to their existing guidance, which is allow 10 weeks for your passport application. They're also stressing this today: do not book unless you're absolutely sure that you have the right passport for your trip. And this really is the most important tip of the day, given that all this is going on. If you think you might possibly need a passport renewal, go and have a look. And you're looking at two things: the date it was issued and the date it will expire. Because now, as many people do, if you're going to the EU, they are legally requiring that you have at least 3 months left on your passport at the time you're heading out of the EU. And they need you to have had that passport issued within the last 10 years. Now, today, the Passport Office has tried to reassure the public. It said it's got another 1,200 staff that it didn't have this time last year. It says it's already managed to process 2.2 million passports this year. And they're saying they'll do their very best. They've got contingency plans. It won't be as bad as perhaps some people imagine.
Could be more staycations there. Chris, thank you. The family of Olivia Corbell, the 9-year-old girl murdered in her own home, will find out this afternoon how long her killer will be behind bars. Thomas Cashman had been attempting to murder a fellow drug dealer last August when his bullet hit the schoolgirl. Chloe Keedy is at Manchester Crown Court, where sentencing begins in about half an hour, and sent this earlier.
Olivia Corbell was killed when a bullet came through her front door on the 22nd of August last year. She was 9 years old at home with her family in Dovecot in Liverpool when two men came running up her street, one of them chasing the other one and firing a gun. The shooter was 34-year-old Thomas Cashman, and last week a jury found him guilty of murdering Olivia, of wounding her mum, of attempting to murder another man, and 2 counts of possession of a firearm. Well, Olivia's family are back here today to see him sentenced, as they have been here for every day of this trial. Thomas Cashman stood in the dock and repeatedly denied any involvement in her murder. He told the court he was a high-level cannabis dealer and that he had been at a friend's house counting out money and smoking a spliff when she was shot. But the jury simply didn't believe him. And I was in court last week when those verdicts were read out, and it was an incredibly emotional moment. Not just members of Olivia's family crying, but police officers that have been involved in this case as well. I think for Olivia's family, who have been here every day for the past 4 weeks, there is some sense of justice, a sense of relief that all this is over. But as one member of her family said to me, they feel their life sentence is just beginning.
Chloe Keedy reporting from Manchester. Next, Donald Trump will be arriving in New York later to face criminal charges relating to payments made to an adult film star before the 2016 presidential election. The 76-year-old's lawyer says Mr. Trump is gearing up for battle when he appears in court tomorrow. Well, on the tarmac in Florida, his plane stands poised to fly him into the waiting storm. Our US correspondent Dan Rivers reports from New York.
The man at the centre of one of the most consequential weeks in recent US history appeared full of confidence in Florida as the clock counted down to his historic court appearance. Donald Trump released this video to followers claiming the charges against him are part of a plot to derail his campaign.
We are now officially a third world country. No president in the history of our country has been subjected to such vicious and disgusting attacks. But they only attack me because I fight for you. It's very simple. They can't buy me and they can't control me, and that scares them beyond belief.
His supporters outside his Florida estate put on a display of unbridled loyalty. Many think the pending criminal case in New York is evidence of an establishment plot to thwart his re-election bid, rather than any tarnishing of his gilded reputation. At the court where he'll appear tomorrow, security is already being stepped up in anticipation of possible protesters. Both those for and against this prosecution are expected to turn out. His lawyer outlined the combative mood which has now settled on Donald Trump's inner circle.
He's gearing up for a battle. You know, this is something that obviously we believe is a political persecution, and I think people on both sides of the aisle believe that it's a complete abuse of power.
The charges are expected to centre around alleged hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels.
Careful. Stormy, are you here, Randall Cohen?
To cover up a brief affair she allegedly had with Donald Trump. The hush money payments themselves are not illegal, but lying about them in company accounts would be a crime. And if that benefited Donald Trump's 2016 electoral campaign,
I am officially running.
It would also be a violation of election law
For President of the United States,
making it a more serious felony. Donald Trump is expected to spend tonight here at Trump Tower in Manhattan and will return to Florida tomorrow night after the arraignment, where he's scheduled to make a primetime TV address.
Well, we're expecting Donald Trump to get on his private jet in Florida in just under 3.5 hours and fly up here to New York. He'll spend the night, as you just heard there, in Trump Tower behind me before this historic court appearance in Manhattan at 2:15 local time. That's 7:15 in the UK tomorrow. Before the actual court appearance, he'll have to sort of formally surrender himself to the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, and then will appear in this very brief hearing, really. It's just really to enter a plea and for the initial sort of timetable to be set out by both prosecution and defence. But the bigger picture here will be, of course, a huge number of supporters expected to turn out as he goes into court, the first former US president ever to face criminal charges. And then afterwards, he's expected to fly straight back down to Florida, where he's due to give an address to the nation on television at 8:15 local time tomorrow evening.
All right, Dan, in New York. Thank you. Well, here the Prime Minister has been outlining plans designed to crack down on child grooming gangs and said that political correctness wouldn't get in the way of protecting young women and girls from sexual abuse. It follows high-profile cases of grooming in Rotherham and Rochdale by gangs predominantly made up of British Pakistanis, in which authorities were found to have failed victims over concerns they'd be accused of racism. But critics warn against the framing of gangs based on their ethnicity, saying it could lead to a failure to deal with the wider issue of child abuse. Well, joining me now is the former North West CPS prosecutor Nazir Afzal, who worked to bring grooming gangs in Rochdale to justice. Thank you so much for joining me this lunchtime. So, Rishi Sunak saying he'll stop at nothing to help tackle child grooming gangs. What do you make of the policy that he's laid out today, though?
Well, I'm very much believing in mandatory reporting, which he announced, or the Home Secretary announced yesterday, but we asked for that 10 years ago and the government rejected it then. I'm very much in favour of special task force. I was part of a special task force, but there was two of us. So the devil's in the detail as to how special the task force is. But I think the broader issues that you just touched on is that the vast majority of victims of child abuse happen in the family or people that they know, then online, then in institutions. Street grooming of the type that the Prime Minister seems to be focusing on is actually the smallest number, even if it is thousands of victims.
And this is based on Home Office data, isn't it?
Home Office themselves have said that there's no reason to, or credible even evidence to suggest ethnicity is the driver here. What is the driver is the fact that men are the violent, sexual violent people. The other issue that I have with what the Prime Minister says, though, is he's focusing on arrest and investigation, but the criminal justice system can't deal with anything at the moment, never mind any new allegations. People are facing significant delays. You have a 1 in 100 chance of a conviction, so you're just raising expectations. And there's nothing in the Prime Minister's statement about prevention.
There is part of a wider issue, as you say, but there have been independent inquiries, there have been reviews of how grooming gangs in Rotherham, Rochdale, Oldham, how they were handled by local authorities, where professionals basically feared allegations of racism they let victims down, they let survivors down. That did happen. That was a factor in those cases, which cannot be ignored.
It can't be. And I put it right, or I think I did put it right.
Yes.
And we put things in place that prevent that from happening in the future, which I think is really important. But I think that by focusing on a particular group of people, the danger is really dangerous, because what you're saying to victims is beware of brown people. When you're substantially more likely to be abused by a white man. 84% of child sex offenders in this country are white men. And so it's actually really dangerous to put them in that position.
Why do you think the government is focusing on this then?
Well, there's no other reason really. It's to create division, it's to suggest that they're doing something when in fact they're not doing very much. You are putting people in real danger. You are also saying to victims, come forward, and then you're not able to give them justice anyway. It's all talk and no action.
OK, well, she's out this morning saying it is all about protecting young women and vulnerable girls in their defence.
He can say that. That's not the reality. I've spoken to victims yesterday, for example, who are really concerned about this because most victims, as I said, happen in other institutions or in other places. And by focusing on this group, you're taking away resources from those areas where they do need support.
All right, Nazir Afzal, thank you very much for talking to me. Thank you. Some other news now. A woman has been arrested over the killing of Vladlen Tatarsky. A pro-war military blogger was killed in a blast at a cafe in St. Petersburg. Daria Tryopova had previously been detained for taking part in anti-war rallies. At least 25 others were injured in the explosion. Finland will become a member of NATO tomorrow. The Nordic nation will become the 31st member of the Western Defence Alliance. Finland, which shares a border with Russia, applied to join following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now imagine going to work with a constant fear of being punched, headbutted or spat at. Well, that's been the reality for around a third of amateur football referees, with some saying they've even had death threats. It's prompted the FA to launch a body cam trial, the first of its kind in the world. If successful, body cameras could become a regular fixture at local matches for the next year. Barbara Holmes has more.
It's a familiar sight all across the country most weekends. Football players in grassroots leagues enjoying a kickabout. But this match in Middlesbrough is different to most in one important way. Their referee is wearing a body cam, a tool being trialled by the FA to deter the abuse and violence many of her colleagues regularly face.
There was a game this season on an adjacent pitch to where we were playing on, and the ref got choked.
I've seen a referee had to run off before, get chased to his car and stuff like that.
On a pitch next to us, two players having a fight, and then one of the players head-butted another lad, and it was just a red card, and the ref was just stood there and just didn't know what to do. Just had two groups of lads fighting. What are you actually going to do?
This trial is taking place in 4 adult leagues in England.
So obviously I've got the body camera on today, so what will happen if I need to activate the camera, I will say I'm powering the camera on.
Referees wear their cameras attached to special body harnesses and only activate the devices when they feel things are getting too heated. In the 4 weeks of the trial so far, that has yet to happen, but refs say it gives them a sense of security.
It's just giving referees that safety net that they need to be able to go out and referee the sport they love every weekend.
But aggression towards match officials is not isolated to the amateur leagues. Fulham striker Alexander Mitrovic is facing a lengthy ban after this confrontation last month. And the Referee Association says more needs to be done to tackle abuse in the sport.
It's too little, too late. The horse has bolted. I think that's fair to say. It's a good deterrent. It's a start. But we should have been doing this 20 years ago, frankly.
Around 100 refs are taking part in the trial, giving them something to reach for before a red card. Barbara Holmes, ITV News.
Now, in her decades in the dance business, Dame Arlene Phillips has done it all, and with some fancy footwork to boot. At the Olivier Awards last night, the former Strictly judge was recognised with a Lifetime Achievement Award, and it's still sinking in today, as Sangeeta Kandola reports.
Before the gongs, stars treaded the glitzy green carpet at this year's Olivier Awards, on the biggest night in British theatre. But for one woman who has carefully choreographed her way through Theatreland, it was a career-crowning night.
To Dame Arlene
A special award to Arlene Phillips for her long-standing contribution to theatre as a choreographer and theatre director.
And I have been so lucky to spend my life doing what I love, and I've never, ever in my wildest dreams imagined that it would lead here tonight. So thank you so much for this Olivier Award.
Arlene became a household name when she formed Hot Gossip, a dance troupe in 1974, getting a break on the Kenny Everett video show. She then stepped into a whole new world. She moved from choreographing music videos to musical theatre, which she's still doing in the West End now. The star, who was a former judge on Strictly Come Dancing, says she has no plans to stop just yet.
You should be right here on this floor. You know, my dancing is nowhere near what it was. It's, you know, it's slower, it's more measured. But I think it's everything that I have the opportunity to do. I don't wake up any morning and not want to go into work.
Jodie Comer.
Alongside Arlene, other big winners on the night included Jodie Comer, who took home Best Actress for her West End debut in Prima Facie.
So overwhelmed.
And Paul Mescal fought off tough competition to be named Best Actor for A Streetcar Named Desire. Arguably, the Oliviers belong to Arlene and also those who've brought shows to life in an industry still recovering from the pandemic. But as they say in the business, the show must go on, and it has, with some outstanding performances. Sangeeta Kandola, ITV News.
We're talking of decades in the business. So Elton John kicked off the London leg of his tour last night, the first of 10 shows at the O2 Arena, part of his farewell Yellow Brick Road tour. So Elton said he'd retire more than 40 years ago, but apparently it's really happening this time. The 75-year-old says his final ever gig will be at this year's Glastonbury Festival. And that's it from us. The evening news is at 6:30, but from everyone on the Lunchtime team, bye-bye.
Today we'll see warmer temperatures moving in from the east, especially around tea time. Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
Good afternoon to you. Finally, a big improvement in our weather as we slide into a new week. A near perfect spring day out there. Plenty of sunshine and blue sky, staying quiet, calm and dry ahead of another cold night for many of us. This is the earlier satellite radar picture. We've got wall-to-wall springtime sunshine and endless blue skies. Just a little fair weather cloud through the southeast, parts of the southwest seeing a little more cloud, and greyer skies through Northern Ireland with a brisk breeze from the near North Sea. Otherwise, a fine day ahead, staying quite chilly around eastern spots with that cold breeze from the near North Sea. Elsewhere, highs of 13 degrees. Not bad given such a cold start. And late and low sunshine before dusk this evening, but temperatures soon drop away. Another cold night, close to freezing in towns and cities, a little lower in the countryside. A slight patchy frost in the most prone spots for those up bright and early. A little more cloud for the northwest with a bit more of a breeze here. See you soon.
Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.